Isaiah 10:22. For thy people Israel be as the sand of the sea, yet a remnant of them shall return. The consumption decree shall overflow with righteousness. Romans 9:27. Elias also crieth concerning Israel. Though the number of the children of Israel be as the sand of the sea, a remnant shall be saved. Precept. 2 Ezra 8:1. And he answered me, saying, The Most High has made the world for many, but the world to come for few. 2 Ezra 8:3. There be many created, but few shall be saved.
Mr. Freeman, what is the historical significance of this story? I think it's has great significance historically. This is an incident of American history that has been pretty much under the rug, but not so much hidden, just not available.
So we have this book, 100 Amazing Facts About the Negro with Complete Proof by J.A. Rodgers. And I want to look at this this section right here, Ancient Civilizations. And we're going to go to 16. And it says, Negroes lived in America thousands of years before Columbus. Central American monuments show numerous carvings of them as gods. When Columbus came to the New World, Negroes had been crossing the African to South America, a distance of 1,600 miles. The first white man to reach the American mainland, telling of seeing Negroes. Columbus, who visited South America, said that he had heard of them there. Okay, so we need to understand that there are three sets of Negroes, or so-called blacks. We had the European blacks, or European Negroes that were in Europe. You had you had the West African Judeans that were sold into slavery. And then you had the other Negroes, other tribes of Israel that were shipped and sailed over here, the indigenous people of Americas. Those three sets of blacks. So everyone that's so-called black didn't come from the same continent or region, of Africa. Okay? And to prove that, to prove some of it, we're going to go to the Apocrypha, this book right here, okay, which they took out. We're going to go to 2nd Ezra, chapter 13. I'm going to go start at 40. And it says, those are the 10 tribes which were carried away prisoners out of their own land in the time of Osea, the king, or Osea, whom Salmanasar, the king of Assyria, led away captive, and he carried them over the waters, and so came they into another land. But they took this counsel among themselves, that they would leave the multitude of the heathen and go forth into a farther country where never mankind dwelt, that they might keep their statutes, which they never kept in their own land. And they entered into the Euphrates by the narrow passage of the river. For the Most High then showed signs for them, and held still the flood until they were passed over. For though that country there was a great way to go, namely of a year and a half, and the same region is called Athroth.
Story has been floating around for many years, and but it's a movie whose time has come. That's why it's Spielberg, DreamWorks, and all of us involved in it now. The significance of it in terms of American history is large, because I think there's a great lesson in here to tell us who we are.
Besides, to them, you're not even American. You're not even African American. You're
who we were 150 years ago. Who we were 150 years ago. I was just amazed, I got to tell you. I mean, when you come to America and you talk to people about slavery, you can talk to black people about slavery, white people about slavery, and they'll give you all this history on slavery, and it only goes back to the 16th and the 17th century. And you're like, don't they teach you the history of slavery? Why? Ask the bloody question. Why are they only teaching you the history of slavery as far back as the 16th and the 17th century?
Of course, you didn't ask to be at the center of this historic conflagration any more than I did, but we find ourselves here nonetheless by some mysterious mix of circumstances, and now all the world watching. So, what are we to do? Huh? What did you say?
Tindanunga, timoningo wale. Hindegbi, utelo, jitingi laini. Yemia, go, ke, follow a togima, hindagbi. Ta manunga tabao. Atima vele. Ta denga vingiwe. Ajia boyeya. Kehindauya. Tigi huwa dema we. Tigi ili bi. Inyamuge. Be. Omu avui. Bomu pieni. Nagbi pie. Tingi wa lofa. Ilongo bito se atigi wa. Tole. Yak boyle. Tingi wa me boylo. Boyjima.
Confite a Dio onnipotenti, beate Maria sempre Vergine.
Triangie. Puyon. Tibembe kule hum siamo apie.
Beato Ioanni Baptiste.
Tatoa ha.
Sanctis
Che
omnibus sanctus.
boylo.
Et vobis
Nunga yama.
per mea culpa, me maxima culpa.
Tiepe.
Id eo prego beatam Mariam semper Virgine.
Che ilenga gilego hum.
Beatum Ioannem Baptista, Sanctus Apostolos Peter et Paulo, omnes sanctos et vos fratres, orare pro me ad Domini Deum nostrum, confiteor Deum,
Mimia.
beate Mariae
Pia fea lina. Jibaha.
Arcangelo, I'll travel for a slave.
Solomon Northup is an expert player on the violin.
I was born a free man. Lived with my family in New York.
Be good for your mother.
Until the day I was deceived,
To Solomon.
kidnapped, sold into slavery.
Why are they only going that far back? Because they don't want you to go farther back than that. Because then you'll actually find out the truth. Find out the truth.
Do you know that the black man in America is Israel? That he's Jews? Do you know that?
Yes.
Yes.
The lost tribes of Israel were blacks.
But from the 16th and 17th century, we'll teach you about slavery. You've got to go further back. And you've got to understand and question, why do they do this throughout the whole of America, in all the public schools? Why do they only go back as far as the 16th and the 17th century to talk about slavery? We've got to go further back than that. Because Islam designed infernal slavery. And then the Ashkenazi Khazars, those who say they are Jews and are not, are the ones that marketed it, and the regal Negro nomads exiled from the kingdom of Judah were the main recipients of it at the hands of the indigenous black Africans.
And who we are now as a result of that. You know? It's great stuff in the movie that tells us that, that who we are is who we were. Who we are is who we were.
Well, I like to see us lay to rest this whole notion of anti-Semitism. The one thing that it is incorrect statement, because the whole idea of a Semites were people who lived in southwestern Asia, including northeast Africa and the Arabian Peninsula, who spoke Ugaritic, who spoke Ge'ez, who spoke Ethiopic, spoke Hebrew, who spoke Arabic. Those are our people. We are a Semitic people.
We don't know who we were. We can't really know who we are. That's a great statement. I think this will kind of help us along. I play Michael Jodson. Not Michael. You're Michael. I play Theodore Jodson. I'm thinking of Michael Contis. It's great. Theodore Jodson, and he's an abolitionist, wealthy abolitionist. And one of the things that is going to make people sit up is the notion of a black man in 1800s who might be wealthy. You see, we are under such misapprehensions. That's what I mean about ourselves. You see, we are under such misapprehensions. That's what I mean about ourselves.
Now, if we go back to this book and talk about slavery, remember, our people, there was three sets of blacks. You had the Aboriginals that were already here, the Negroes, tribes of Israel. Then you had the European blacks that were deported, during the wars over there in Europe. King James was a black man, so-called black man. And then you had the West Africans, or the West Judeans, the Israelites, So you had three branches of so-called blacks in America. Okay, now slavery, so we're going to go to 64. Okay, the first slaves held in the United States were not black but white. They were Europeans, mostly British, who died like flies on the slave ships across. On one voyage, 1,100 perished out of 1,500. Let me see, at another time, 350 out of 400. In Virginia, white servitude was for a limited period, but was sometimes extended to life. In the West Indies, particularly in the case of the Irish, it was for life. White people were sold in the United States up to 1826. 50 years after the signing of the Declaration of Independence, Andrew Johnson, President of the United States, was a runaway and was advertised for in the newspapers. Okay? So it wasn't just a so-called black, you had everyone, in a sense, was held to a slave, to the elites.
Because if you know the history of the whole concept of whiteness, if you know the history of the whole concept of the white race, where it came from and for what reason, you know that it was a trick, and it's worked brilliantly. See, prior to the mid to late 1600s in the colonies of what would become the United States, there was no such thing as the white race. Those of us of European descent did not refer to ourselves by that term. No such thing as the white race. Those of us of European descent did not refer to ourselves by that term really ever before then. And so they would get together more than our history books taught us. And so they would get together more than our history books taught us.
We need to get over this group stuff, because at the end of the day, they are the ones that are controlling the narrative. And that's what they want. They want wars. They want division of the colors, because they created the system. They created the matrix, in a sense, which they did. Black is not a race. White is not a race. The ancient civilizations, the ancient people, they went by the tribal names. Like I said, we are Shemitic, Hebrews, DNA and everything else. But see that the first slaves in the United States were not black but white, and he has proof too. We're gonna go to in the back of the book. Let's see. 64. It's a real good book, though. Let's see, 64. All right. Slavery. For the transportation of white slaves to America in their sale, see James O'Neill, The Workers in American History chapter, The White Slave Trade. He quotes, one ship sailing in 1745 with 400 Germans, of whom only 50 lived to see free America. Still, another bearing 1,500 lost, 1,100 from deaths on the voyage. Page 64, New York, 1921. Pastor Coos, writing at the time, said, packed like herring and sold as slaves. J.B. McMaster, noted historian, says of the white slaves, the newcomer became, in the eyes of the law, a slave, and in both the civil and criminal code was classed with the Negro slaves and Indians. They worked hard, were dressed in the cast-off clothes of their owners, and might be flogged as often as the master or mistress thought necessary. In other words, the exploiters were no respecters of color or race. See also number 67 of this work. So they didn't care. They didn't care whether you was the same seed line or race. It was all about that status. That's how they tricked people, like that Tim Wise said, what did he say? He said the invention of the white race. Okay? Back to the 100 Amazing Facts about the Negro with complete proof, Mr. Rodgers. So I'm going to compare Mr. Rudolph's point of view and Mr. Rodgers. Mr. Rodgers, he was born in 1880, and I assume Mr. Rudolph was born in the 1900s. But we're going to go over to the back of the book and see what they say about black people. Okay. Miscellaneous, number 91. Black and colored, on the other hand, have no historic meaning whatever for African peoples.
I'm black, y'all, and I'm black, y'all, and I'm blacker than black, and I'm black, y'all.
Black, from the Anglo-Saxon, black, has the most horrible meanings. See any large dictionary. Color is related to the Latin clair, to conceal, to color up, paint a thing other than its true light. Thus, the tendency to declare Negro on the ground that it means slavery is sheer ignorance, okay? Another very racial group chooses black, which, as was said, is positively a white man's word. Now, why would this man born in 1880, say that black is a white man's word? Well, you know, we have the Black Lives Matter, which is funded by George Soros and other different organizations. Jewish, you know, with liberalism comes from the European philosophy, Marxist, communist. So why is black associated with a European or a white man's word? Excuse me.
And I'm black, y'all, and I'm black, y'all, and I'm blacker than black, and I'm black, y'all. I'm blickety black, blacker than black, black, I'm blacker than black, yo, because I'm black and I'm back.
So now we're going to go to the Valley of the Dry Bones, conditions that face black people in America. All right, Mr. Rudolph, let's see what he has to say about the word black. Okay. Let me go to page 74 or 77. All right. The curse of the loss of identity. All right. And we're going to go right here. The term black.
And I'm blacker than black, and I'm black, y'all. I'm blickety black, blacker than black, black, I'm blacker than black, yo, because I'm black and I'm back.
Developed out the civil rights struggle of the 1960s, okay? That's when you had Martin Luther King, you had Malcolm X, you had other revolution freedom fighters and everything else, but that term is liberal because we are not black people.
Yo, I'm black and I'm black, y'all, and I'm blacker than black and I'm black, y'all.
Black is not a nationality. Even the scholars of old knew that black is not identified with a nationality. It's based on a color. You can't identify black to a region, one specific region or continent. Black is everywhere, at least the color of the skin, because so-called black people have been everywhere on this earth, the four corners, okay? So Stokely Carmichael, the grand leader of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, harangued us on Black Power. At the time, Black Americans required new awareness of Black pride, okay? Blacks threw the hair processes out the window, and the Afro style became the new look. The widespread usage of the word black instead of the antiquated words Negro and color was a step forward. Nevertheless, we have not arrived yet at a uniform word to designate the nationality of black people in America, okay? However, I have told you that blacks are the original Israelites, which is true. Most Americans use the word black in the wrong context. The word black is an adjective, and it should only be used to describe a noun or pronoun. For example, a black man or a black shoe, okay? So even Rudolph understands that the word black is not a race.
And I'm black, y'all, and I'm black, y'all, and I'm black and black, and I'm black, y'all, and I'm black.
And it's not a nationality. It just describes our skin tones, our different shades. So we have other names, other history that, you know, is referred to our own, not this word. Because this is a white man's word, black, a liberal word, okay? All right, we're gonna go to 66. I think there's a movie coming out where a black man is owning white slaves. That's nothing new. It's just people haven't been taught correct history, so they think that's a new idea, a new thought, you know, in a movie. But like the scripture says, there's nothing new under the sun. Okay, so 66. In 1670, Virginia passed a law forbidding Negroes from buying white people. This was 51 years after the Negro had arrived in chains. The same law was repeated in 1748. Free Negroes brought white people in such numbers in Louisiana that the state made a similar law in 1818. Okay, remember that map in 1747, the Kingdom of Judah. Those sets of blacks or Shemitic Hebrews, Judeans, they couldn't read and write. So you had other Negroes here that, you know, from Europe, most likely, you know, that, you know, bought slaves, white or black. Okay. Let's see what else. 69. In 1860, there were 487,000 free Negroes in the United States, some of whom owned slaves. C.D. Wilson estimates that there were 6,230 Negro slaveholders. The tax returns of Charleston, SC for 1860 showed 132 Negro slaveholders with 390 slaves. The Negro slaveholders, like the white ones, fought to keep their chattels in the Civil War. Okay? So it wasn't just so-called blacks that were in slavery now. That's a narrative that they always like to push because, you know, history over here is based off of narratives. It's not based off of truth. And that's how you capture the emotional side of the so-called Negro or black man. You taught him that he's just a slave and no one else. So we run with that, you know. Well, let's go to the back to 69, see what he says. Okay. 69. Right at 69. Okay. The U.S. Census of 1790 showed 195 Negro slaveholders, of whom 6 were in Connecticut and 9 in New York. In 1830, there were about 4,500 Negro slaveholders. In 1836, slaves owned by Negroes in New Orleans numbered 640. On Negro slaveholders, see Popular Science Monthly, October 1912, C.G. Woodson, Free Negro Owners of Slaves, and gives the names of the slaveholders. See, that's very interesting because a lot of the black Europeans, they had Anglo-Saxon names. So I can see why, you know, a lot of the Judeans from West Africa would have European names. But then again, you know, I don't know, it's just a speculation. But you had Negro slave owners as well that own other so-called blacks. So there you go.
I'm black, y'all, and I'm black, y'all, and I'm blacker than black, and I'm black, y'all, and I'm black, y'all, and I'm black, y'all, and I'm blacker than black, and I'm black, y'all.